You are listening to Unstoppable Actors, the essential podcast for ambitious, aspiring actors. With me, Louise, the artistic director of Standby Method Acting Studio. And every week, I'll be talking with you and sharing how you can become a paid, working, unstoppable actor, because you 1000% can. An acting career is doable. Are you ready? Welcome to another juicy episode of Unstoppable Actors. I'm so excited to have you here because we are diving into, oh my gosh, a topic that divides opinion throughout the acting industry, and not just in the modern day acting industry right now in 2022. It has been doing this for absolutely decades, from the days when Dustin Hoffman used to train at the Actors Studio with Lee Strasberg. He openly says in interviews that him and his acting friends, Gene Hackman and all the others, used to meet up in bars and talk about who is the best acting coach and which is the better acting technique. And that still happens today. It still divides opinion, as I've already said. So the two techniques we're diving into are method acting and Meisner technique. And I'm going to give what I believe is a balanced view on this. I'm going to give the pros and cons to both. And I'm going to share with you what each technique is really about as well. So we can unpack this and you can get a clearer understanding of how method acting works and how Meisner technique works. So why am I even allowed to speak on this subject? Well, I've dedicated my entire creative career to studying the methods of Stanislavski, Lee Strasberg, Uta Hagen and Sanford Meisner. I originally trained at a traditional drama school in England who, used a bit of everything. And I've also trained in Meisner technique. And the people who trained me are the people who were trained by Sanford Meisner himself. And of course, I've been over to the Actors Studio in New York and taken some training there as well. So I have this bird's eye perspective on method acting and Meisner. Now, before we dive into this, if you're brand new to the Unstoppable Actors podcast, hello, welcome, pull up a seat, get comfy. I'm going to take you on what I believe is going to be an epic journey through Meisner and method. My name is Louise, and I'm really excited to have you here. And if you're returning to the Unstoppable Actors podcast, hello, it is so good to have you here. I'm not what you might call the typical acting coach because I'm very down to earth, very salt of the earth. Sometimes can be a little bit blunt, but do always try to give a balanced view on everything. And I'm very passionate about acting. I am very, very passionate about the craft of acting. You can ask any one of my acting students. I am always pushing them to raise the bar, to raise the standards of what they expect from themselves. So yeah, let's dive into this. So people do pitch method acting and Meisner against each other, as I've already said. And I honestly believe this is never going to stop. I think while ever there are humans on the planet and there are people who want to be actors and there are people who are acting coaches and have the various different studios and schools, this is always going to happen. So by no means am I expecting to end this argument here, because that is definitely not going to happen. In fact, if anything, it might, get people further opinionated. Who knows? But let's just dive into it then. So there are more than two acting techniques in the world, but we're specifically looking at Meisner's technique and method acting. So Meisner, let's just unpack how that works. Some of you are going to understand because you will have, done some training in Meisner, and some of you won't because you might be brand new to acting, or maybe you've been in the acting game a while, but you've just never gone into Meisner. So Meisner uses two exercises. Number one is repetition, and number two is the independent activity. And repetition still works through the independent activity. Don't worry if you don't understand what that is. I'm going to unpack it in a moment. Method acting uses sense memory, animal exercise, effective memory, and relaxation predominantly. There are other exercises within method acting, but these are what I would say are the predominant ones. Again, don't worry if you don't understand what these exercises are. So repetition is a process of basically stripping things right back. You and a partner are opposite one another, and you are simply making statements about the other person, so about your partner, that are true in your opinion, from your perspective. And likewise, your scene partner is doing the same thing about you. They are making comments or statements, about you that are truthful from their perspective. I know this probably sounds bonkers on a podcast because really we ought to be seeing this visually, but that is what happens. And the aim of the game is for you to tell the truth from your perspective and also to listen to your scene partner. So it trains your listening skills as well. So, for example, I might be stood with my scene partner and we take the exercise right back to basics and I say, you have blonde hair. And then they would repeat back, I have blonde hair. And then I'd repeat back to them, you have blonde hair. And they'd repeat back to me, I have blonde hair, until something else catches either one of our attention in that moment. So then my scene partner might say to me, you have grey eyes. And I would repeat, I have grey eyes, etc. And we keep going on like this. Now, the exercise does develop. It doesn't just stay there. It does develop until we get a point of view on things, until we have a response to what the other person is saying with our point of view. And then we move on to independent activity. And independent activity is where you have got something to do. It might be sewing, or it might be painting something, or it might be fixing a broken cup. So you're focused on the independent activity, and then your scene partner enters the room or enters the space that you're working, and we start the repetition process again whilst working on this independent activity. So now you've got something to do because, of course, all acting is about behaviour. We're never just stood opposite each other saying lines. And then how it further develops is you bring into the independent activity what we call given circumstances, supposed circumstances, and a scene need. Okay, so that's how it develops. I can't explain the entirety of Meisner's technique in a 30-minute podcast because there's just not enough time for that. So that's how it works. So then if we go to method acting uses sense memory, which is the recalling of senses. For example, you may want to be, you take this exercise right back to the very basics. You might be sat in a chair, you've done your relaxation exercise, you've got yourself into a state of creativity from a relaxed point of view, you've released any mental and physical and vocal or emotional tension, and you go into this sense memory exercise and your coach will guide you through something. For example, very basic exercise in sense memory might be recalling a place that you used to love hanging out when you were little. So it might be down by a river, or it might have been in a field somewhere with your friends. And by a process of remembering, you share all of the sensory elements of that memory as if it was happening right now, as if you were back there. And what this does is it helps you concentrate, it helps you sharpen your imagination and be creative, and it helps you generate feelings. Now, you may get the same feelings you had when you were back in that place when you were a child, or you may not. You may get something different. But as a method actor, we don't judge them. We go, oh, well, I've generated something. So now I've created what we call truth. And Meisner's repetition and independent activity is doing the same thing. We're generating truth. We're creating the truth. Also, in method acting, we have animal exercise, which is where you would study an animal intensely, all the different variabilities of that animal, the environment it's in, the way it responds to its environment, the rhythm of the animal, the way it moves its limbs, all the rest of it, and much, much more. And then by a process of manipulating your own body to that of the animals, you then start to humanize it. So now we've got a physical way of working with a character where we create a character that can look very different to us because we've used this animal as the stimulus to create the truth of that character. Again, based on the given circumstances, which are the facts that the playwright has written. We also have effective memory, which is a bit of a controversial exercise in method acting, where by a process of exploring something from your past through the sensory elements of it, we can generate emotion on demand in a scene where we need to, where we're struggling. And then, of course, we have the relaxation exercise, which, as Lee Strasberg in his own words said, is to put the actor into an artistic prison, which in my mind, I unpack that and take meaning from that to be to put you in a state of heightened creativity where there is nothing else but creativity. Okay, so we've got the relaxation, effective memory, animal exercise, sense memory. There's more exercises, but they're the predominant ones. They're in method. And then in Meisner, we've got repetition and we've got independent activity, which brings repetition into it. And then we start working with given circumstances and scene needs and supposed circumstances. Again, if you're quite new to acting, some of these words are perhaps going to be going over your head. Don't worry. The more you immerse yourself in the acting world, the more you'll understand what these things mean. And for those of you that have been in the acting industry a while, maybe this is a good refresher for you. So, people's arguments that I've heard over the 12 years that I've been coaching actors is that method acting is dangerous. And yet very few people say that Meisner is dangerous. So let me unpack this. They say that method acting is dangerous because the actor can take their character research and character prep so far that they can't differentiate between who they are and who the character is. But they think that Meisner is safe because it's just working off of your scene partner. However, Meisner in the wrong hands can be dangerous too. I have heard countless stories of my acting students who have been to various different places to train in method where they've said, oh my God, Louise, it has gone, where they were training in Meisner, and they've come back to me and said, oh my God, Louise, it was crazy. Like the teacher was telling us to follow our impulses. So people were throwing chairs at each other. They were wanting to hit each other. What I would like to say is that any method, whether it be Meisner, whether it be method acting or anything else, even Stanislavski, in the wrong hands, any method is dangerous. It's just like driving a car, isn't it? It doesn't matter that we've all passed our test. In the wrong hands, a Robin Reliant could be a dangerous vehicle. In the wrong hands, a Lamborghini could be a dangerous vehicle. In the wrong hands, a Fiat Punto could be a dangerous vehicle, right? It's not actually the vehicle. It's not the vehicle that's dangerous, just like it's not the technique that's dangerous. It's the person who is controlling the vehicle or using the technique that can be dangerous. So what I always say to all of my students is we take personal responsibility and we don't make any of these things dangerous. So I hope that's making sense, and that's not here to scare you. You know, I don't want to put you off either Meisner or method because they're both phenomenal acting techniques, but it is, as I've said, in the wrong hands, anything can be dangerous. It's just like in the wrong hands, a carving knife can be dangerous. It depends what your intentions are with the carving knife, with the vehicle, with the acting technique. And hopefully you work with integrity, because that is something that I instill in my acting students. We have to work with integrity, because if we don't, that's when things can go wrong. So people very rarely say Meisner is dangerous, but when these people are throwing chairs around and wanting to hit each other, it's hidden under the guise of, oh, but they were following their impulses. They were following their impulses and they got the impulse to throw the chair, so they did. Well, where do you draw the line then? Where do you draw the line? Because I always remind myself that no matter what technique I am using, and by the way, I do use both Meisner and method acting. I predominantly use method, but I definitely do use Meisner as well. It's about knowing my purpose as the actor is to tell a story under imaginary given circumstances and to do that authentically. It's not to get into this little bubble of, oh, but my impulses are saying do this, so I'm going to throw a chair at someone and, oh, I don't care about the consequences because, yeah, it was the truth. It's actually about serving the story, always. So we have to remind ourselves that no matter what technique we use, our duty is to serve the story. So people say that method acting is dangerous because, as I've already said, they say that, effective memory can be dangerous, which it could be. It could be if somebody is, being pushed to go to a place that they don't want to go to. And again, I've heard horror stories of this. Some of my students who have auditioned for the 10-week modules because they're curious about method acting and got accepted have, confided in me and said, I'm actually really scared about method acting because I took these classes with so-and-so and we did this exercise where they were getting me to recall emotions and they were pushing me to go to this place where I've not dealt with it. And it made me cry, and then I felt depressed for like 2 weeks after. Again, it's what I go back to, what I've said earlier. Any method in the wrong hands can be dangerous. That's on the tutor in that case. The tutor should never, ever be pushing a student to go to a place they don't want to. So I accept that, yeah, that could be dangerous in the wrong hands. And of course, what I've already said is, about the character prep work. Some actors go to the nth degree, to the absolute extremes. Well, that's on that actor. We always have to take personal responsibility. So I've gone to the sort of negative sides and the arguments that people throw out and the blind spots. But let's talk about now, the positive sides of both techniques, of both Meisner and of method. So both Meisner and method are there to help you tell the truth. Meisner discovered that what actors do is overthink and get inside their own heads and become self-conscious. And there's truth to that. We do, because as actors, sometimes we're looking for validation in our performances, and so we look to the director and wonder, what are they thinking? Do they like what we're doing? Or we might start getting in our heads and thinking, oh my gosh, did I say that line right? I've got this emotion coming up. Am I going to be able to handle it? And am I going to be able to recreate it and feel it? And that is self-consciousness in performances. And that's not an exhaustive list. That's just a few examples. So Meisner created repetition to get actors to focus elsewhere and not on their self-conscious thoughts. So that is a very positive aspect of Meisner. Now, Lee Strasberg developed the method to help actors create moment-to-moment unique characters that can't be copied by any other actors, but also to tell the truth as well, and to be able to generate the truth independently. So that's why things like sense memory, animal exercise, relaxation, effective memory were created. Relaxation is actually the very first exercise you will ever learn in method acting. And it's a challenging exercise because, similar to Sanford Meisner, Lee Strasberg recognised that tension is the killer of all artists. Tension could be physical tension, where I'm physically tense on stage, or it could be the mental tension, which is what Meisner discovered as being self-consciousness or overthinking. So they're both aiming for the same result. They are both aiming to rid the actor of this overthinking, this self-consciousness, this tension, which blocks the pure expression of any scene or any character. So each actor can be in the moment and tell the truth with integrity under the imaginary given circumstances. So they're both aiming for the same thing, but they've just gone about it in slightly different ways. Now, Lee Strasberg and Sanford Meisner did used to work together, and then they broke off because Sanford Meisner did not agree with some of Lee Strasberg's exercises or methods, and therefore that's when he came up with the repetition. So they're both aiming for exactly the same thing, truth under the imaginary given circumstances. So for me, it's not about, is method better than Meisner or is Meisner better than method? It's about you as an artist training and discovering what works for you. Because as I coach my acting students, and as I have done for the last 12 years, we do have a module on Meisner. Because in my mind, and I get criticised for this, I get criticism that says you should not be using Meisner if you're using, you are a method acting studio, you can't do that. And my answer is, says who? Says who? I know that both have their place. I know that there are positive aspects to Meisner that I have to use as an actress and that I want to pass on to my acting students. And I know that there are so many positive aspects to method that I use in my own acting that I have to pass on to my acting students. But within that, the actor finds what they would call their own process, their own method. So if I take animal exercise from method acting and effective memory from method acting, what we discover as an acting coach is that some actors have a more natural inclination towards the emotional work. So they like the effective memory, they thrive in that. And then you have some actors who have got a more natural inclination towards the physical type of work, which is the animal exercise. So they don't thrive in that emotional environment. They do better creating the physicality of the character. And they love animal exercise, and that's where their strengths are. And then you have some actors who really don't like that side of the work and they prefer the emotional side. And that's where they thrive in that effective memory exercise. So just because one actor uses animal exercise and another uses effective memory doesn't mean they're not a method actor. It means they've found their own method. And just because one actor, and I'm talking about myself here, uses a combination of effective memory, of Meisner in the independent activity doesn't mean they're not a method actor. It means I have found my own method, and both techniques serve a purpose. Now, this may cause other people to have other opinions on this, but I stand true in this. I always say to my students, why would I cut my nose off to spite my face? What if in any given moment, for some reason, I am struggling to connect to a method acting exercise? I don't want to be left stranded as an actor. So what I then might do to revitalise my imagination is go to independent activity in the midst of a scene. Now, my audience never know what I'm doing, because my technique should always be invisible to them. But the techniques are there to stimulate imagination, to stimulate creativity, to stimulate belief from the artist in this reality of the character so they can tell the truth. So there are pros and cons to all methods, just like there are pros and cons to a Lamborghini, and there are pros and cons to a motorbike, or there are pros and cons to a Seat Ibiza, or there are pros and cons to a Honda. And there are pros and cons to everything in life. And you have to, by a process of exploration and throwing yourself into these techniques, decide what your own process is. So yes, we have a module on Meisner at Standby Method Acting Studio, despite being a predominant method acting studio. Actually, we have our own method, the Standby method, which, draws upon Meisner and Stella Adler and Uta Hagen and Lee Strasberg and Stanislavski, and of course, our own techniques as well to create the Standby method. But yes, we have a module that is specific to Meisner's technique, and it's called Offering Gifts. And we work through the repetition and we work through the independent activity. We work through all of the exercises. And then we have the animal exercise module, and we have the sense memory module and the effective memory module. Relaxation is something that is woven into every single 10-week method acting module. We also have the script analysis. We also have building a believable character, unlocking imagination modules. We have so many. Yes, they predominantly focus on method acting, Lee Strasberg's method, but that we do combine it with Meisner, because for me, the actor has to have a full toolkit, not just half a toolkit based on opinion of what somebody else has said, because somebody else has said, well, Meisner out-trumps method, or someone else has said method out-trumps Meisner. We have to have a full toolkit. So in any sticky situation in a scene, sticky situations happen all the time where all of a sudden you're aware of the camera and it's like, whoa, I've lost my focus. Or all of a sudden you've forgot your lines and again, you've lost your focus and you've lost the belief in this scene. Or, oh my God, I can't generate this emotion. I just seem to have lost it. We have to have a full toolkit, and we have to, as the artist, get in control and go, right, quickly, what am I going to go to refine my focus, refine my belief, generate these feelings and sustain this character throughout the scene? What am I going to go to? And it might be that in one moment you have to go to independent activity or repetition, or it might be that you have to go to a rampage in your head from method acting, or it might be that you have to quickly go to sense memory from method acting. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what process you use. So for me, it's not method versus Meisner or Meisner versus method. It's what is your process as the actor, and that's what the training is about. The training is about you finding your own method. I have some students who do not connect to the rampage exercise, whereas the rampage exercise for me is phenomenal. It gets me right in the moment, it gets me connected to the need, it gets me connected to the stakes, and it gets me believing and immersed in this character. But for other students it doesn't work, so they would use the sense memory exercise, which works brilliantly for them, or they use a variation of a repetition exercise, which works brilliantly for them. And that's not to say that actor's right and I'm wrong, or I'm right and they're wrong. Again, I'm going to boil it down to what I've already said. It's about you filling up your toolkit with as much as you can, committing to your craft and finding your own method. And, if we think about the pros of Meisner, it uses another actor as the creative stimulus. It moves you away from overthinking. I've already said this, but the cons of Meisner are, well, all actors are at a different level. They all have different levels of skill set with their craft. So if you're struggling in a moment, and you think, oh my God, I need to go to the other actor to find my truth. What if that actor is struggling themselves and you're expecting that other actor to create the truth for you? Some actors get bogged down with that, and that's a con. I mean, you can work with whatever the actor is presenting as the truth, but if you're expecting them to create the truth for you, that's where people have a hard time with Meisner. And of course, with method, the pros are that it allows you to self-generate. You create from the inside out. You're not reliant on anything externally. So no matter what the level of skill set that your scene partner's got, you can always self-generate the truth. But the cons of that are that requires a lot of concentration training, because you have to be able to redirect your awareness to where you need it to go internally and not get stuck in a bubble. So it's just you in this little, self-imposed bubble, forgetting about everybody else and not listening to your scene partners. You've got to be able to redirect your awareness to where you need it to go to create the truth, whether it be sense memory, whether it be rampaging, and at the same time still listen and have that external concentration as well. So I hope this has given you a balanced view of method acting and Meisner technique. I think the best thing is this podcast is actually not going to really teach you anything about it, because words don't teach, experience does. The best way for you to learn how to fill up your toolkit is to get acting training. So I am going to go into a cheeky plug, because we do have our applications open now for the 10-week method acting modules. The next one begins the week commencing the 10th of October, and it is the final 10-week method acting module of 2022. You have to audition for a place on this. We are accepting auditions from 15 people for the London class and from 15 people for the Sheffield class. So the auditions are Sunday, the 11th of September. I've linked the application form in the description, and I've also linked the invitation page in the description where you can read up more about the training if you want more details on what I've just covered in this podcast. But as I've already said, you as the actor have to commit to training, and you have to commit to the craft, and you have to commit to learning what your personal process is, and then that becomes your method, because each actor works differently. So I hope this has been useful. I would love to hear your thoughts on what I've shared in this. So please do leave a review or leave a comment on whichever platform you're listening on, whether it be Audible, Spotify, our very own website, which is standbymethod.com, or Amazon Music, wherever you're listening. Please leave your thoughts and comments. I read through all of them, and sometimes I read them out in future episodes. So I hope it's been useful, hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next episode. I have absolutely loved hanging out with you, and I really hope you enjoyed this episode of Unstoppable Actors, the essential podcast for ambitious, aspiring actors. Now, if you did, I'd really love you to subscribe so you never miss an episode, and leave a review. And if you would like weekly injections of inspiration, you'd like mini method acting challenges to keep you making progress with your dreams, come and join the most supportive acting community online by clicking the link in the notes to help you become an unstoppable actor.